So now what this is really all about is evaluating trig functions for all kinds of angles in all different quadrants, and hopefully the majority of them will be using special angles. So, little review. If we look back and we think about, remember we're going from 0 to 90 in quadrant 1, 90 to 180 in quadrant 2, 180 to 270 in quadrant 3, and 270 to 360 in quadrant 4. And we're going to be evaluating all 6 trig functions, but we'll start off with the 3 big ones, sine, cosine, and tangent, in those quadrants. So let's remember, in quadrant 1, all the functions are positive. And you might remember this from last year. In quadrant 2, only sine is positive. In quadrant 3, only tangent is positive. And in quadrant 4, only cosine is positive. So you probably did ASTC. All students try cheating, all different ways of remembering it. Just remember what it's about. All positive, sine positive, tan positive, cosine positive. Okay, so what does that really help you do? Well, it helps you when we have to find an exact value. We're going to do something called QSFR. Okay, Q stands for quadrant. What quadrant is the angle in? Our first example, 225. 225 is between 180 and 270. So that is in quadrant 3. S stands for sine. Is cosine positive or negative in quadrant 3? Well, in quadrant 3, tan is the only one that's positive, so cosine must be negative. F stands for function, so our function is cosine. And R stands for reference angle. And for our reference angles, the way we can remember it, in quadrant 1, the reference angle is equal to the angle. In quadrant 2, the reference angle is the angle between theta and the x-axis. So in quadrant 2, our reference angle is going to be 180 minus theta. In quadrant 3, the reference angle is going to be theta minus 180. And then in quadrant 4, the reference angle is going to be 360 minus theta, because it's all in reference to the x-axis. So for this, since we're in quadrant 3 we do theta, which is 225 minus 180, gives us a reference angle of 45 degrees, which is good because that's one of our special angles. So to summarize what this question's really asking, we take our sine, our function, and our reference angle. We have to evaluate negative cosine of 45. So it's going to be negative times whatever the cosine of 45 degrees is. We go back to our chart, we look at the cosine of 45 and see that it's radical 2 over 2. So that's our answer, negative radical 2 over 2. Okay, let's do another one. Sine of 300. QSFR. Q is what quadrant? Well, 300 is between 270 and 360, so we're in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, cosine is the only one that's positive. We're working with sine, so that's going to be negative. The function is sine, and then the reference angle. Well, in quadrant 4, we do 360 minus theta. So we do 360 minus 300 gives us 60 degrees. So now we need to evaluate negative sine of 60 degrees. So we're going to have negative, and we go to our chart, whatever the sine of 60 degrees is, and that's rad 3 over 2. So there's our answer, negative rad 3 over 2. Now let's just jump ahead to, let's do secant, because that's one of our reciprocal functions. Remember, we have sine, cos, and tan. And then we have cotan, secant, and cosecant. And the way these hook up, these are the reciprocals. So what does that mean? Well, it means that whatever the sine of 60 is, the cosecant is the reciprocal of the sine of 60. You just flip it. So let's look at this. Secant of negative 240. First of all, we don't like that negative. I don't like dealing with negative angles. So we're going to add 360, find the coterminal angle, and make it the secant of 120. And now we can do our QSFR. So quadrant 120 is in quadrant 2. The sine, well, secant goes with cosine, and in quadrant 2, that's negative. The function, for now, we're going to make it secant, and our reference angle in quadrant 2, we do 180 minus 120 is 60. So we really want negative secant of 60 degrees. Well, secant goes with cosine. So let's look at what the cosine of 60 is from our chart. And from our chart, cosine of 60 is a half. So we say, okay, negative, and we just flip the 1/2. So negative 2 over 1 or negative 2, because secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So this is how you remember. If we write them in this order all the time, this is how they match up with their reciprocal functions. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tan. So to finish this off, finish off pages 9 and 10. Thanks.